track gets the all clear. I think Alan Moffat's done a great job to get up on the second row of the grid.
Certainly has the dice off the front row. I don't think we're too far off the start. Drivers bringing the revs up in the cars for the front row. Andrew Miedecke and John Bowe. Round number 7 of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship from Sandown. Beautiful start there from Miedecke on the inside. They all get away very quickly indeed, but it'll be John Bowe who wins the start, grabs another gear and goes for it. And here's Longhurst down the outside with Dick Johnson. They've both split the field already. Heading down into the left-hander. How close do you want it? Johnson has mounted out of the second row, and going in right behind him is Tony Longhurst. A brilliant start also from George Fury as they make it down through the left-hander. And it looks like they've all got away.
Not Miedecke. Miedecke's back in midfield. He's only got about a half dozen cars behind him.
Well, he started well, and obviously something's gone wrong after that. Longhurst sits in, splitting the two Shell Sierras as they work the back straight now, exiting through Castrol Corner. George Fury, a good start there, now sits in 4th spot. Right behind him is, of course, Alan Moffat. Got away pretty quickly here today, and here's John Bowe coming up on the outside of Longhurst.
Miedecke's off the track. Miedecke has pulled off the track.
I reckon that they were once again held too long on the line. Tony Longhurst goes through to 2nd place. John Bowe on the outside of him, and Andrew Miedecke gets out of the Oxo Ford Sierra, having done, what, 500 metres. Now Bowe again on the inside, locks everything up to go beneath Tony Longhurst. This is a fearsome scrap.
I'll be at it. Bowe trying to cover for Dick Johnson. But Tony, providing he's got the right setup here today, will make life unbearable, I would think, for John Bowe and Dickie Johnson. He gets back on the tail of him. Fury sits back there in 4th spot. Perkins also a good start in the Holden Special Vehicles car.
John Bowe really lights it up as he puts power to the ground in the lower gears through the tight part of the track. The rear end of the car really sliding. It's been a very good start from both Tony Longhurst and George Fury. Larry Perkins has lost a little bit of ground. This car only lasted a couple of laps in its first appearance back in Adelaide. Then they had some small problems with it up at Lakeside last weekend. Overheating. The crowd acknowledges the charge down the front straight as Dick Johnson leads the pack, car 17, then John Bowe, Tony Longhurst, George Fury. A fairly healthy gap back to Larry Perkins. Colin Bond has come ripping through the field. He's passed Andrew Bagnall and Jim Richards and Peter Brock.
Yeah, Bond's travel through the pack has been absolutely outstanding. Started from 17, now up to 6, really. He has been hauling the freight.
And Alan Moffat, who started from 4th spot, dropped back to about 9.
Yes, he's made a fairly slow start again. He's done that for the last couple of rounds of the championship, but it doesn't seem to have altered his end result. It's the gap from Fury to Perkins, and then Bond, the charger in the pack at the moment, already rounding up the BMWs, gone past Andrew Bagnall. A shocking day yesterday in practice for him. 2nd in the championship at the moment, needs to get into contact with these fellas here. John Bowe and Tony Longhurst. He's 4th in the point score at the moment, Longhurst, and he also needs to try and close in some of those valuable points. There are really 3 fellas in the championship at the moment, with Johnson leading. John Bowe and Colin Bond arguing over 2nd place. Bowe out-qualified the boss at 146.97, Johnson at 147.02. Actually, last time through that turn, Longhurst was a bit closer to John Bowe. He had been the previous lap. John's car bouncing around a bit today. Not too much happening back behind them except Colin Bond, who we've mentioned, coming up through the pack. So as they exit past the pits, Johnson goes through. Bowe is in 2nd, Longhurst 3rd, and George Fury in 4th. There you can see the view from the back of the grandstand as they sweep past here, fastest part of the circuit. Tony Longhurst in the Freeport Motorsport Ford Sierra, trailing those 2 red Shell Sierras. Not too far behind them, nor is Georgie Fury. And look at Bondy coming through on the inside of Larry Perkins. Don't be surprised if you see Bond up to 5th. And encouraging stuff here from the Nissan. Fred Gibson's Peter Jackson team, they've been having all sorts of dramas, just getting to terms with the car, not because there's been any problem with preparation or, for that matter, there's anything wrong with the car. They're doing their development whilst they're racing, and they prefer to do that privately so they can get their act together rather than do it publicly. Yeah. But the pressure is to get out there and perform, and that's what they're doing. So I'm sure that they'll be encouraged by this performance from George. There's Perkins, then Bond.
Bagnall, Moffat, Richards, and then Brock. And then behind Brock, Tony Noski.
Larry Perkins shortly to field the challenge from Colin Bond and the Caltech CXT Sierra.
I thought Bond was going to get him at the bottom of the main straight last time round, but Larry played it pretty brave going in there under brakes and managed to hold the Sierra out. We'll see whether he can do it this time. Dick Johnson, what a mighty performance by him. He did say in the interview just prior to the race that he was going to be in front by the first corner, and that's exactly the way it panned out. And poor old Andrew Miedecke.
Can't take a trick.
Walking disconsolately back across the midfield here at Sandown, having not travelled 500 metres after winning pole position.
Something obviously amiss in the driveline area.
So there's Perkins. Colin Bond still closing on him. He, of course, runs in 5th. Colin Bond is 6th. Dick Johnson is your race leader. Disappearing down at the end of the straight. There's the gap back to 2nd. John Bowe. The gap opening to Tony Longhurst, and if anything, Longhurst falling back into the clutches of Georgie Fury.
1.9 seconds between Dick and John at the moment. So Johnson charging off into the wild blue yonder. Not an unfamiliar sight. This is George Fury. Peter Jackson BP Nissan Skyline. 3rd time out this year. Same car being run, or same type of car being run in the UK at the moment by Wyn Percy and Alan Grice in rounds of the British and European Touring Car Championships, and being hailed by the European press as the only saviour at the moment from total Ford annihilation. It's trying to get the gap now from Bowe to Longhurst. It's 1.6 seconds, and then from Longhurst back to George Fury, 2.3 seconds.
There's a spin there from Johnny Bowe. Car number 18 got it around sideways. That's the first little anxious moment for Bowe. There's George Fury going through in car number 30, so that opens it up just a little touch.
John looked to be sliding around a lot in those opening laps, didn't he? The back of the
but there's
car.
another one sliding around just in front of him, let me tell you.
Yeah, that was Tony Longhurst in the Freeport Sierra.
So he goes through. So too does George Fury, and John Bowe drops back behind them. So that's going to make it exciting for the charge. So Longhurst now advances into 2nd spot. George Fury is 3rd, John Bowe is 4th, Larry Perkins is 5th, and Colin Bond is 6th. There's Andrew Miedecke walking back, getting a big hand from the crowd here at Sandown. They've appreciated the effort of getting pole position and the disappointment he must now feel after lasting a quarter of a lap.
Well, that was Dick Johnson flashing past as Miedecke walks back.
Lap 5 of 32. John Bowe trying to catch up for that lost ground, that little indiscretion.
Colin Bond just passing Larry Perkins quite comfortably down the straight in a demonstration of absolute horsepower. Race leader Dick Johnson has a gap of 5.7 seconds over Tony Longhurst, and John Bowe here in 4th place chasing George Fury for 3rd.
Now they work the rise up the back hill here at Sandown. You'll notice the speed difference between John Bowe and George Fury. That'll give you an indication. Nissan, bit of work to do on the number 30 car.
It's a bit depressing, isn't it, for the opposition at the moment? These things are very, very fast. And no doubt that Neil Lowe and his team of engineers have got the 2 shell cars really cooking. And they were the first fellas to really discover true horsepower in these cars. Certainly the others are following now. Longhurst, Moffat and Bond. But that's incredible when you can just pull out and go whack like that. It makes life a lot easier.
Well, the times that the cars are doing now, one can only, I know it's terrible to turn the clock back, but at Bathurst last year with the Eggenberger cars, I got a feeling these cars of Johnson's would have run away and hidden from Eggenberger's cars. Let's recap it for you on the Castrol scoreboard. Tricky Dick Johnson is your race leader. Tony Longhurst 2nd. Georgie Fury was 3rd, now 4th. Bowe has moved up the spot, and rounding out the 5 is Colin Bond. Lap 7 of 32. First major casualty of the race, or the second I should say, is Colin Bond, who was up there as high as 5th. He's now in the pit area with problems. That has made life a little easier for John Bowe as well, because Bowe has also been able to work past Tony Longhurst and advance to second. There he is, car number 18, John Bowe, who had that big slide, was just able to pass Tony Longhurst as we brought you that action from the pits. You get the Gemini for the moment. There's George Fury, sits one back behind them. And then quite a gap back to the next car through, being Larry Perkins in the Holden. Then this great dice that's been going on for about 4 or 5 laps, Andrew Bagnall in the Oxo Supercube car. Alan Moffat right behind him. And Jimmy Richards in car number 1. Richards has, in fact, been all over these 2 Sierras, but loses out with the real stick down the straight and up the back. Quite surprising Moffat was able to do such a good job yesterday. And he's just clinging on to Andrew Bagnall. He's given the others a big start. You just don't pull them in. Can't think just how fashionable it is to run a white Sierra this year. There's 2 red ones and the rest are white. Someone obviously colour coordinated the entire field at the start of the season.
Incidentally, Dick is lapping in times around the low 49s, 1:49.23 his last lap. That compares with qualifying in the high or the low 47s for Dick. So in other words, he's still pushing very, very hard early in this race in a race setup.
Well, their scrap still continues. Bagnall just getting away from Alan Moffat at this stage. Moffat being kept terribly honest by Jimmy Richards, who comes storming up and drops in for the draft at the top of the hill. Meanwhile, in the pits, Peter Mackay is with Colin Bond.
Yes, and Andy Miedecke. I'm going to talk to Colin in a moment, Mike, but I've got with me Andy Miedecke, who's just made the long, lonely walk back from his motor car. Andy, what was the problem?
It's broken something in the driveline, Pete, so that was it. We got a good start, and then it just, there was nobody home from there on.
Well, it must be just, you must feel awful after such a great qualifying effort yesterday to go out after 500 metres or so.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, in the warm-up lap, the car felt fantastic, and I really think we were looking very good, you know, but I guess that's, you know, we have a small budget team, and sometimes we probably have to use parts, you know, just that one small time, and that's one of those parts that's broken, I guess.
Well, I, for one, would love to see Andy Miedecke get a good budget for the rest of the Touring Car Championship and the endurance races later on, because then we'd have to stop meeting like this, which would be great for everybody.
Certainly would be. In the meantime, a fella that's really running like a house on fire here today at Sandown is Jimmy Richards. You noticed before he was able to just get by Alan Moffat. That is no mean feat, considering that Jim is running the BMW and closing now on Andrew Bagnall. So, which prompts the question, has something gone wrong with the Moffat machine?
Alan qualified 4th, a time of, what, 48.7. It was about 1.7 seconds slower than Dick's time. We'll get the watch on him next time round and see how he's getting about in his race trim. Alan is firmly of the belief that right now is just a very good opportunity for him to look, listen and learn and come to terms with the car, get the settings right for later in the year. And obviously that's part of his ploy at the moment. Let's go down to the pits once again with Peter Mackay.
Thanks, Neil. Well, I hope Colin Bond's trips to the pits early in proceedings are not habit-forming either. Col, what's the problem this time? You've got the killer engine in today. We expected big things, and you made a wonderful charge through from, what, 17th?
Yeah. Well, basically, it was running a little bit hot in the water temperature. I think we were just blowing a head gasket. The water temperature just went crazy on that last lap, so I just decided to put it away because to continue on to be pretty useless anyhow. There mustn't be that much water left, I think, in the block. It's a bit of a shame because it has certainly got the legs. We had the handling all wrong, but we're still up to 5th place, and I think we could have easily got the guys in front of us.
I guess like so many other touring car teams, you'll be looking forward to this break before Amaroo to get your act together.
I think 3 races in a row is getting hard for everybody.
OK. See you next time.
Thanks.
Peter Mackay with a very disappointed Colin Bond. Bondy, of course, was one of only a couple of drivers that had even a remote chance of hauling in Dick Johnson as far as the Shell Championship for 88 is concerned. But that's paid to his possibilities. John Bowe and Tony Longhurst, theoretically, are the only 2 that could overhaul Dick, but that would depend on a lot of imponderables. Larry Perkins goes through, Andrew Bagnall closing. There's Jim Richards on screen pursuing them relentlessly, having got by Alan Moffat. And Richards partnering Peter Brock in the mobile operation, has partnered in before to 3 James Hardie victories, of course, in 78, 79 and 80. Lives and works in Melbourne. Jim, 40 years of age, and is one of the greats. 85, 87 winner in the AMSCAR series at Amaroo Park, and of course the Australian Touring Car Championship in the same 2 years.
He's been the killer bee today, though, young Jim, after splitting the Moffat-Bagnall combo. Now sits behind Andrew Bagnall. Bagnall's closing on Larry Perkins all the time. And Peter Brock well back behind the number 2 today.
They've completed 10 laps out of scheduled 32 laps in Sandown.
So Johnson, Bow, Fury, Perkins coming under a little bit of pressure from Bagnall, Richards, Moffat, then Brock, Tony Noski and Bill O'Brien. Then the top 10 placings, roughly 1/3 race distance.
He's throwing it around all right. Nice and close to the tail of Andrew Bagnall in the second Oxo car. There's Larry Perkins. They're all making ground on Larry at this stage. Moffat hasn't been able to do too much with Jim Richards.
The BMWs seem to have found their pace at Sandown, and that's it, because Jim qualified here last year in a 49.6 and he qualified here yesterday at exactly the same time.
And this particular track, you would expect the Sierras to run away and hide from Jim. All of them, I mean.
Consistency, I guess, is on the side of the BMW, even though this year they've lost an inch of rubber, which makes the qualifying and racing performances probably even more outstanding. But they are capable of running hard and consistent for a long time, and that's being demonstrated. And up goes Jimmy. Nope, can't get in there.
Was thinking about it.
That's being demonstrated at the moment in the European Touring Car Championship, where Roberto Rebaglia is doing very well and has won a round, and I think leads the title from the Fords, who've had a few problems. They've been pressured a little bit into braking in the long distance races over there. It'll be interesting to see whether that pattern remains in Australia.
Andrew Bagnall out of there. He was gaining on Larry Perkins.
He made a couple of spots out of qualifying, which was good. Good start. Gee, look at the horsepower working nicely for Andrew Bagnall. He just opens up a gap. And then when things tighten up a little bit in this part of the track, you'll find when they come back out the other side, Jim Richards is all over the back of him. In fact, the back of the BMW that time getting a little slippery as Jim turned right, then left, and then through the really slow part of the course. Hard to get a car as quick as a Ford Sierra through there. And Alan Moffat squeezes the power on gently. A real consideration for these fellas in today's race is tyres. So careful with them. I think it always looks comfortable and easy from where we sit. The fellas that have driven Ford Sierras say that it's very difficult work. A car with that much horsepower, very light, about 1,100 kilograms. And like most racing cars, never enough rubber underneath you.
Coming up on some slower cars here. This is really the only dice of the race. Most of them have really spread out now by about 4 or 5 car lengths. That's why we've been keeping an eye on this. It's the same old story. Bagnall just flies away going up the hill. When horsepower comes into play.
Yeah, he makes an enormous gap up there. It's, the camera fibs a bit. It's, when you look from the side, it's very wide. And then Jim goes through this whole process again from about this point on. Thrashes the little BMW around the back to the best of its handling and braking abilities, and then gets right in underneath the back of the Sierra. And Andrew just goes zot down the straight. We've got the watch on Jim Richards this time. It'll be interesting to see how quickly these 3 drivers are getting around the circuit by comparison to Johnson, who's still doing 49s. Peter Brock some distance behind those 3 at the moment.
For all their potency, Sierras are proving a little fragile, apart from the front runners, of course, here at Sandown. In the top 10 on the track at the moment, there are only 4 Sierras. Of course, they're running first and second with Johnston and Bauer. And then Bagnall running in 5th place, Moffat running 7th. But 3 Commodores up there in the top 10. The 2 BMWs, of course, and George Fury in the Nissan.
Jim Richards' run in the championship so far this year. You'll recall a bit of the drama surrounding the air intake system on the BMWs in round 1 as Alan Moffat gets very close to the back of the BMW and makes good his assault. What's Jim like under brakes here? I don't think he can argue.
He thinks about it, though. Look at
that
that.
on the inside. Great stuff from Jim Richards.
How frustrated would Alan Moffat feel after that one?
How frustrated does Jim Richards feel? He just says another 100 horsepower I'd have him for lunch.
Got to take your hat off to Jim Richards. Superb piece of driving.
Trouble for George Fury, is it? Yep. Andrew Bagnall has just gone straight past him on the outside, so Fury has got problems with the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Richards goes through, and Moffat will be the next one through as well. So Colin Bond out, Andrew Miedecke out, and trying to limp back to the pit area now is, in fact, George Fury in the number 30 Peter Jackson entry.
Gee, that's a disappointment. Incidentally, Jim's time on that
flat tyre, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Was a 1:53.24. So what's that? 4 seconds slower than the sort of times that Dickie's doing.